everyone, welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report or don't report on enough. And today is our last Underreported Stories full podcast caveat, but full podcast of 2024. Of course, there are going to be a few more videos that I've got coming up for you. They're pre-recorded. They're coming up during Christmas week, but I'll detail all of that at the end of today's show. Well, I don't want to take any time kind of dilly-dallying. We've got such good stories, such thoughtful stories today that I think are going to take up plenty of time. So let's get right into what we're going to be talking about today. We've got the details on the Abundant Life Christian school shooter, details that the media are not reporting on yet, as well as the White House's, we'll call it interesting, response to this tragedy. It's very ironic. Anyway, we're also going to dive into some of the online feud between Riley Gaines and the insufferable Jemele Hill. Plus, a Justice Department watchdog has updates on the Fed's potential interference in January 6th. All the details on the ABC defamation settlement, as well as an update on this whole drone situation, which has truly been eating up so much time. I'm so fascinated. I want to know the drones, what they are. I also want to see one. I don't know why I want to see it. So I just want to be part of the drama, you know? Anyway, without further ado, let us get into the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. Today's show is brought to you by Based, my merch line. And we've just unveiled our winter line with a new beanie, a hoodie, a shirt, and a tote bag. I'm an independent creator, and one of the best ways, if not the best way, to support this show is by purchasing my merch line that represents your views. Instead of just asking you guys for donations to fund my independent journalism, my business partner and I created a line of merch called Based Apparel. Based basically means the opposite of woke. It means you're based in logic, based in truth, based in facts. You get it. Anyway, head over to basedinlogicapparel.com to check out our latest apparel. My personal favorite right now is our Based two-tone shirt, which I'm wearing right now. And remember, when you buy merch, you are directly supporting this show. And when you get your apparel, please be sure to tag me on Instagram so I can repost. Like I said at the beginning of the show, let's start out by talking about this tragic shooting at Abundant Life Christian School in Madison, Wisconsin. If you've heard about this, but you just want the details, let me give you like a quick 20-second catch up. So a teenage girl, 15 years old, shot and killed a peer and a teacher and injured 6 more people at the school. 2 of those who are injured are dealing with life-threatening wounds. They are both students. And then of the remaining 4 people, 3 of them are students, 1 of them is a teacher. We are praying for all of them here in the Clark Stout household. And so last night, as all of this was breaking, police were reporting that the shooter was a 17-year-old. But investigative reporter Andy Ngo put out this whole deep dive alleging that the shooter was 15 years old and going through this alleged shooter's social media and uncovering who she actually was. And this morning, police then verified that Ngo's reporting was actually spot on. It was accurate. This girl, her name was Natalie Lynn Rupnow, but for whatever reason, there isn't really an open explanation. She went by the name Samantha. This tweet thread from Andy Ngo got like 9.5 million views, so very controversial at first. A lot of people were saying he has no idea what he's talking about because authorities came out and said the shooter was actually 15 or 17 years old, like I said. But no, we have officially confirmed this reporting is real, and yet another reason why you should be funding independent journalists, because we're better at this. I don't know why I'm saying that. Anyway, you come for the news, you get my personality. Apologies. Anyway, let's just go through this tweet thread, figure out what we know, and then kind of piece together the pieces from there. So one of the shocking aspects of this story was A, that this individual who carried out the shooting was a female, and B, that she did not identify as transgender. Now, this isn't to hearken on the trans community or call them out and say they're all cuckoo crazy, therefore they commit such atrocities. No, the point there is that a lot of the shootings we've seen in America really do stem from rage issues or untapped kind of aggression to a certain degree, and that's not traditionally found within biological females. And of the shootings we have seen from females, the majority of them have been biological females who identify as boys, and we kind of have to wonder, we have been wondering, to what extent testosterone or any of those cross-sex hormones has to play a deal with this. So again, this is kind of a very new phenomenon in America. I wish the whole school shooting thing was a phenomenon that was new to America, or not existent in America, I should say. But like this idea of women now coming into it, very new, very odd. According to Nose Reporting, this girl who went by the name Samantha or Sam online, she used the username Crossixir. It's cross and then IXIR. That was her username. And she had extensive online obsessions with school shootings as well as death. Particularly, she seemed to take an interest in the 99 Columbine school shooting. Very sad. She was a big fan of the rock band KMFDM, which was also referenced by one of the Columbine shooters. So again, showing an interest in some of the things that the Columbine shooter was showing interest in. Well, my question there is like, how do you see your child interested in Columbine, so much so that a reporter could go and investigate this online and find this interest, this very clear interest, and you not put the pieces together? I don't know. It's very interesting to me. I can't imagine that. Rupnow's online friends identified the X account, which purported to belong to her, soon after news broke of the shooting. The account lists the last post in the account is the OK hand symbol in the school's bathroom by the library minutes before the shooting. This picture, which, again, if you're in the listening audience, it's just the OK symbol with her feet. She's in all black. This is allegedly posted to her X account, and it's just her. It looks like she's sitting in a bathroom stall. Like, there's really not much to the picture. This is what the individual looked like. We're not really interested in giving them fame. It does appear that this individual was trained with a firearm. Now, I feel like there are a lot of people who are like, oh, why are we giving kids firearms? There is a world in which people are utilizing firearms for good. And if I'm going to be honest with the headgear, the proper eye protection, which I'm going to garner from headgear, the bag, the proper technique, the proper stance, etc. It does seem like these are being used in a confined area under supervision. So you can't take issue with this and know that it's going to lead to what we now saw happen at Abundant Life Christian School, right? This is another picture of the individual with her two dogs. Very, very sad that somebody who would be seemingly maybe just an oddball in school was then almost radicalized to this position. So then we get into the manifesto, which the manifesto has reportedly been leaked, and I'm going to emphasize reportedly, okay? We don't know for a fact, and I'm still figuring it out. We're a one-woman operation over here, so give me time. I'm working with as much as I possibly can. So a purported, quote, sneak peek of Sam's manifesto was posted to her Discord account, where she discussed a desire to kill all males in a rant inspired by fringe extremist online culture. A screenshot was posted on X by a person who was her Discord friend. The account also posted a mirror selfie photo of Rupnow. So let's kind of go through these pictures. That doesn't give me any information. This is kind of the, quote, sneak peek of the manifesto. And I'm going to read it because I think it gives you insight into a particular ideology and a particular worldview. It says, women are the only hope for this wretched world. But even women have been brainwashed by moids. Not sure what that means. Let me know. Type in the comments if you know what that means. For too long, they've internalized the patriarchy and turned on each other, always begging for male approval and validation. It's disgusting. I realize the truth. Men are irredeemable. I'm not going to say the next sentence because you can read that. They can't be reformed or redeemed. They are an effing scourge upon the earth. The only solution is to totally exterminate them. And every foid, I'm going to take moid as men and foid as women. I don't necessarily understand that. Foid who worships these effing parasites. I think that's the terminology. I don't understand what that means. If you have understanding of what that is, again, please comment. But it is MOID and FOID, which I'm going to take to be male and female in some alternate universe, right? Again, Rupnow's Cash App, this is back to the reporting. Her Cash App account is a picture of the Columbine shooters. She had an account on something called Watch People Die, where she commented on the videos. Her Spotify playlist also featured themes about killings. The Tumblr account of the deceased mass shooter also features content about other mass shooters. She also posted about getting a pistol for her birthday. We're going to assume that that is from a parent, potentially. We don't know. Somebody has also published 2 pages from the last known version of the shooter's manifesto. The screenshot that we read from earlier is from a purported earlier version previewed to her Discord friends. Now, that is very interesting that this manifesto was put out and the friends on Discord didn't say anything. I'm wondering if there's any criminal liability in that. It's very interesting. I don't plan on reading this whole entire shebang manifesto, but it is, you could just go to Andy Knows X page and it is rightly available right there. Now, one of the underreported aspects to this, obviously, the manifesto is top underreported. Secondary to that is that Joe Biden released a statement calling for gun control following the Wisconsin school shooting. He put out, just like a blanket statement saying Congress must pass common sense gun safety laws. And I'm just like, bitch, you just pardoned your son of all gun charges a week ago. Maybe you don't chime in on, just shut your mouth. Shut your fucking mouth. Okay, but here's the real question we actually need to answer, right? Is feminism to blame for this shooter's actions? And here's my take. You let me know yours. Toxic culture that exists on both the right and the left, the extremes, where you see people like, I'm just going to use him as an example. I know people love him, but like Andrew Tate saying that like women are only needed for procreation. And then you have the far less feminist extremists saying that like men are useless incels, right? Those cultures, what they do is they pit men and women against each other. When, in my opinion, we're not supposed to be against each other. We do have opposing characteristics, and I understand that. We are supposed to celebrate those opposing characteristics and find ways to unify, to live cohesively as men need women and women need men. And these lies, specifically the ones here that are being dragged on by feminism, those lies are to blame for this shooter's ideology. And I do like to be consistent here in blaming the ideology. I'm not going to blame Lena Dunham or something for this, right? That'd be absolutely ridiculous. I'm consistent here. We are blaming the ideology over individuals in cases like this. So again, I kind of prefaced this earlier about, why is this a trend happening? Why are women acting like this, becoming increasingly violent, right? And like I said, we can kind of put something like the Nashville shooting, which happened down the street from me, we can put that to potential ideologies, like transgender ideologies, but also as well as potential cross-sex hormones, right? Now, this is my kind of hot take, and I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say, but I'm not going to really change my mind. It is a public health service to put out a notice if this individual, this woman, was on drugs. And I don't mean like Percocets or Molly or any of that shit. No. I'm talking an antidepressant. Because, you see those commercials where they're like, and this is the list of symptoms you have. You might kill yourself. You might do this. Blah, 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 blah. And, they go on and on. It's kind of ridiculous. We see those side effects listed. But it's really difficult to actually fathom what those impacts actually are. Because the side effects of birth control, the side effects of, the litany of mental health pills, antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, they are serious. And I'm not saying that her actions were not her actions. They were. Her actions were her actions. She consciously made that decisions. But those drugs are not to be messed with. And if she was on any of those drugs, I actually think we should know. We're in this cultural shift of making America healthy again. And I actually think that part of that making America healthy again is being honest and open with people about what the real side effects are for some of these drugs, including suicidal ideations as well as ideations like this, okay? Because she ultimately did delete herself. So we know that there was something off there, something wrong there. I've heard inklings as well that the parents sent her to this was very new, right? The parents sent her to this school to kind of deal with ongoing problems. I know that there's like people are gonna be like, it's a violation of HIPAA, blah, 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 blah. I'm just saying, if in an ideal world, we would know what medications this person was on, because they are not to be trifled with, okay? And not just putting a kid on an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication is not gonna fix them, clearly, okay? My final thoughts on this are, like I kind of hearkened to, the parents. The parents are going likely to be prosecuted for this, okay? Now, what's interesting here, and where I will make a caveat, and where I'm very interested to see where this whole trial and case goes, is that the gun seemingly was obtained legally. And since the child is no longer around to be held to account for this, I think that the parents will likely be put on trial. We saw in Andy No's reporting that she kind of bragged about getting a pistol for her birthday. And then again, I think that dredges up, if she was on drugs, right? If she was on antidepressants, etc., should people be allowed to have firearms while taking those medications? Please let me know your thoughts. I really do think that we should take cases case by case when it comes to prosecuting parents for decisions that minors make with firearms. But in America, I do see this trend, especially in the last 2 years. It very much started with Oxford, Michigan, and the school shooting that started there. We're starting to see this trend towards prosecuting parents who taught their kids firearm safety and then weren't aware of a psychotic break in a child. And I think there's two ways to deal with that. How is the parent to know in some cases, and how is the parent not to know in others, right? You gotta look at both, and I think that's why it's got to be a case by case basis to see the negligence or alleged negligence of a parent there. The other thing I will add is, again, this is my perfect world. I know that people are going to go off and say, like, a HIPAA violation. If we're going to be prosecuting the parent for giving the kid the gun, if part of it was in turn due to drugs or, what are they called? Like antidepressants, etc. I've been blanking on that word this whole episode. Arguably, you could be prosecuting the pediatricians too, because they're not giving the children and adults full understanding of the prescription pills they're on. Just an argument. I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like I said, there was a reason why we didn't have like a little preamble before. That was a very lengthy story. But now I want to get to our next story. We got to talk about this. Let's talk about some internet drama between activist Riley Gaines and former ESPN anchor Jemele Hill. Now, the controversy started when Riley Gaines posted about WNBA star Caitlin Clark's comments, so Caitlin's comments about white privilege, or we'll call it alleged white privilege, right? So in case you missed it, Caitlin Clark was named Times Athlete of the Year and said she was thankful for the recognition, but also wanted to recognize the Black players who she said she looked up to, and then acknowledged her white privilege in this whole arena. And now I have said time and time again on Newsmax and other social media platforms that when I'm talking about the whole Caitlin Clark debacle and anything she does, I like to remember that she's 22 years old. And when I was 22 years old, and I will just speak for myself, I would say and do things that maybe I didn't believe to try and keep the peace and appease my peers. Now, I think I did it less than other women my age, being, an outspoken conservative or whatnot, but I still did it to some extent. I didn't necessarily learn the lessons that no matter how hard you try to appease the woke mob, they're still going to come for you. So I like to give Caitlin Clark the same grace, that maybe in 3 years, when she realizes no matter how kind, wonderful, talented, and woke she is, people will still hate her because of her skin color. But anyway, that's kind of the backstory to this. But Riley Gaines, who again, prominent female former athlete, tweeted about Caitlin's comments, and this is where the whole Riley versus Jemele Hill feud really kickstarted. Okay, so here's where all the drama sets in. So Riley Gaines was tweeting about the Caitlin Clark drama and said, no one was asking for Caitlin Clark to position herself as a, quote, right-wing hero, which, true, 100% true. No one really cares whether Caitlin Clark is right or left or what side she falls on. I was very much saying this about Simone Biles earlier this year when we were talking about the Olympics. Just remain neutral, right? You're beloved. Everyone loves you. I've actually made the same argument about Taylor Swift. You are such a cultural icon. Why mar yourself in politics? It's such a waste of time, right? So I'm totally on board with that. Riley proceeds to say, that Caitlin Clark is a phenom who inspires countless young women to play and achieve. So she has great admiration for her. But Caitlin Clark missed the mark on this one with speaking very much about like this alleged white privilege. People in the comments are very much chiming in. White privilege of basketball. Of course, this is absurd. Like the majority of the WNBA is Black women and is Black lesbian women. And the same thing in the NBA. I know the argument is, well, no one watches the WNBA because they're Black. I'm like, no one would watch the NBA. No one would watch football. Like, that's a stupid argument. So maybe you could make the argument about gender, okay? I'll grant you that. How about that? However, it's not the race thing has kind of already been diluted by the fact that people are watching the NBA. They're watching the NFL, right? Like, people are watching these sports. So if they have such a great issue with Black people playing sports, no one would be watching. So that's when Jemele Hill kind of pops in, and she's just a professional race hustler. She's always, every time I see her, I think obviously she has no idea who I am, and I wouldn't purport to have anything in common with her other than the fact that we both went to Michigan State. And I'm like, really? Of all the people to graduate from my alma mater, this bitch? It's like annoying. But anyway, she goes on and says, you holler all the time about supporting and protecting women, and yet the moment that Caitlin Clark expresses appreciation and respect for the Black women in the WNBA, many of whom she grew up watching and idolizing, suddenly you're acting like a disappointed parent. Child, you could not tell on yourself any louder. Okay, there is a big difference between protecting women who have biological men coming into their locker rooms and commenting on an ongoing cultural debate about whether Caitlin Clark expressing, quote, appreciation and respect. This is what I had issue, again, I think this is what Riley was getting at. You can, in your interview, your Time Athlete of the Year interview, it would actually be very classy of you to say, yes, I'm very thankful for this award. I think I've definitely earned it. I also know that there are so many other players out there who I look up to in all across the WNBA who are so worthy of this, there's worthy opponents, etc. There's a way to say it. It was the added element of race that was odd in particular. Are you saying the other white female and WNBA players are not worthy of this award, only the Black ones? It's weird to add in somebody's skin color, right? But it's because there's peer pressure. Like I said, she's 22 years old. She's being told that she's getting this attention not because just she's talented, but she's talented, white, and straight. That's why. I would like to combat that argument and say that I don't think that's actually the case at all. I think Caitlin Clark is popular because she holds herself with grace and dignity. When I actually was first hearing about, I didn't hear about the WNBA first. I mean, I knew it existed, but I wasn't paying attention. I was paying to NCAA collegiate women's basketball, and I heard about Angel Reese first, right? She was on LSU's team, very popular. I knew the name Angel Reese before I knew the name Caitlin Clark, okay? Because Angel Reese was considered a better talent at the time than Caitlin Clark was. The difference between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese is not in their skin color. It is the way they hold themselves in society. Has nothing to do with anything. Race has nothing to do with this. Everything it has to do with is the way that they hold themselves in society. Angel Reese has been a cussing, quite frankly, rude, dramatic, begrudging person. She sits there the whole time with her shoulders slumped, bitching and moaning the whole time. I'm not interested in propping you up to my daughter if you're going to be a bitching and moaning, whiny drama queen. Caitlin Clark holds herself there, and she answers the questions, and she smiles, and she's part of it, whatever. I just don't know how to put it. It has nothing to do with race, and I think that's why race hustlers like Jemele Hill, they're so irritating, because it has everything to do with class. And I think class you can say in two ways. Class and the way you hold yourself and uphold yourself. There are plenty of Black women in the WNBA that are classy, wonderful. They're just probably not as talented as Caitlin Clark. But when that comes around, people will idolize her. I guarantee it. Again, the other player that we were talking about that is comparable to Caitlin Clark in terms of national fame is Simone Biles, a Black woman. America has no problem propping up Black women. That's not our issue. Our issue is, or alleged issue, which Jemele Hill doesn't want to actually talk about because she'd rather talk about race because it makes her money, is because, or is that, Caitlin Clark is a classy woman. End of story. Let's keep going into this because I could just ramble on about how irritated I am that people do this. Riley Gaines went on to say, saying Caitlin Clark's race and sexuality make her problematic. Clark isn't the problem, she's the solution. Being a longstanding professional race baiter must be so exhausting. She then went to Riley Gaines clipped part of Jemele Hill going off the rails on Caitlin Clark, saying, "We would all be very naive if we didn't say race and her sexuality played a role in her popularity." Again, wrong. It has everything into the way she holds herself and upholds herself. While so many people are happy for Caitlin's success, including the players, this has had such an enormous impact on the game. There is a part of it that is a little problematic because of what it says about the worth and the marketability of the players who are already there. What it says about the worth and marketability of your players is that when they act kind and they uplift each other and they're incredibly talented, they will get a lot of attention. When you act a fool and you are rude to people, you roll your eyes and you push people because of their skin color, no, America's not going to uplift that. Sorry, you just get it wrong because you live in a bubble. Jemele Hill then said, this is where shit went off the rails between Riley and Jemele. "Girl, you need to thank Leah Thomas every day of your life for helping you get famous. Otherwise, you would have been just a decent college swimmer that no one knew. You wrote the book on grifting, not me." Okay? To respond to that, I've met Riley. We're like cordially friends at work. I don't like text her, like have a good, not good relation. Like I don't know her very well. We've just met at work conferences and whatnot. But from my little time with Riley, I think I could garner and say on her behalf, I think Riley would love to not be doing this because if she wasn't doing this, there wouldn't be biological men in women's sports and everyone would be good and move on. And I know that. I feel the same way. I would love to just be out of a job. I'd love to just be a stay-at-home mom, be out of the job. Then the media would be covering all the media stories that I want them to cover. Good. End of story. Yay. We're all good. We're living in a great world. That's not the reality. So Riley is doing this work and advocacy in this interim time when people are paying attention to her, yes, but it's not forever. Jemele Hill went on to say, "I noticed you didn't post the original LA Times piece. My comments appeared in that provided the entire context of my remarks. Instead, you posted an opinion piece that intentionally misrepresented what I said. In the same article, I called her a generational talent in the female Steph Curry. If you struggle with reading and comprehension, just say that." Okay, now we're just getting at her intelligence. Also, Jemele, we went to a school where the chant against us is "go green, go white, can't read, can't write." Like, let's just calm down a little on that one. But Riley finally came back with probably one of the most epic damn son moments of all time and said, "How deeply regressive and utterly misogynistic for Jemele Hill to tell me to thank a man for the platform I have. Thank him for what? Violating us in the locker room? Stealing a national title from a deserving woman? Indirectly stripping us of our First Amendment rights? Just say you hate women, Jemele Hill." Oh, shit. That was a really good comeback. Obviously, Jemele Hill had no comment after that because how do you tell a woman to thank her entire platform for men violating her? It's awful. But if you've got thoughts on this drama, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. All right, moving on to our third story. Another conspiracy theory has been debunked, or at least half debunked, right? So the FBI reportedly had at least 26 confidential informants on the grounds in Washington, D.C. during the January 6th storming of the Capitol. According to the report, most of the confidential informants participated in illegal activity when storming the Capitol. Reporting from the New York Post says, like I said, FBI had at least 26 confidential informants. Leadership at the Department of Justice has long been adamant that it did not have sources who, quote, orchestrated the riot. Now, notice the semantic linguistics there. It's so annoying. People have always wondered whether there were people within the FBI there coaxing other people on, similarly to the coaxing that went on by Justice Department or federal officials, I'll call them, in the case and plot against Michigan Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer. Okay? Very odd. So leadership including outgoing FBI Director Christopher Wray, said, "If you're asking if the violence at the Capitol was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources or agents, the answer is no. However, there were still informants there, right? That was kindly, nicely, oh so nicely admitted or omitted from testimony. That yes, there were FBI informants there at the Capitol, 26 of them. We just don't know to what extent they actually went and orchestrated this, right? This article says the DOJ's Office of the Inspector General found that the FBI's confidential sources on the ground, 4 entered the Capitol in the midst of the riots, 13 went into a restricted area. Only 9 were found to not have engaged in any illegal activity, according to this long-awaited report. Critically, that report also shot down unsubstantiated speculation that the Bureau had agents stoking some of the mayhem that day. So we don't know to what extent these individuals, how do I say this? We don't know to what extent people would have taken action if it were not for these informants being there. And again, that is considered some form of entrapment. So now we need to go back and review and find out who these informants are and how we find out who those informants are. And can we even find out who they are because they're confidential informants? And were any of the people who are now sitting in jail coaxed and led on by someone who was a confidential informant the entire time? Those are all really important questions that we have to ask, right? Very, very important questions. The FBI did not give its informants permissions to flout the law by entering restricted area. They just did it on their own volition. This is a little bit into it. It also says, our review concluded that none of these 3 FBI informants were authorized to enter the Capitol or a restricted area or to otherwise break the law on January 6th, nor was any informant directed by the FBI to encourage others to commit illegal acts on January 6th. Just because they were encouraged and told not to, again, does not mean they did it. They were encouraged and told not to break the law, and they did. They were encouraged and told not to enter the Capitol, and they did. So how do we know that they did not encourage others to commit illegal acts on January 6th? This is huge for these cases. Like, as I'm saying this out loud, I am realizing how monumental this is. I loved this post from President-elect or Vice President-elect J.D. Vance saying, for those keeping score at home, this was labeled a dangerous conspiracy theory just months ago. And this whole story got me thinking reading this story in tandem with reading my morning news this morning, it just got me thinking. So Axios was talking about how the Washington Post is losing it. Like, it is losing its, quote, bravery because the newsroom is having this massive shakeup. Everyone's exiting. Everyone thinks the Post is flailing under new leadership, mostly because the woke mob is like pissed off and refuses to do their job. And so Axios' whole foray was into what was going on inside of the Washington Post, and then kind of lauding how the Post did this incredible January 6th coverage, and they haven't been able to replicate that in any way. And then you take that funny story and you hold it next to this story, and you're just like, of course the Washington Post is shuddering. They're getting lauded with Pulitzer Prizes for their brave January 6th coverage when literally half of it was a bunch of lies and a sham. It's like, people are smarter than this. They're unsubscribing to crap like the Washington Post. And while it might feel like a mass exodus because there's a massive change coming to it, justifiably so, there probably needs to be a mass change coming to the Washington Post. It would probably benefit them greatly. All right, for time purposes, let's get into our next story. I'm not going to pull up an article on this because I literally feel like I know this story, off the top of my head. I have these numbers memorized. It's like borderline autistic. Anyway, so this next story is about ABC News and George Stephanopoulos having agreed to pay Donald Trump $16 million to settle a defamation lawsuit. So ABC News agreed to pay, it was $15 million in a donation to a presidential foundation or a museum set up in Trump's name or set to be established for Trump in the future. And then they also had to pay $1 million to set aside for Trump's attorney's fees. ABC News and George Stephanopoulos also had to issue statements expressing their regret. I'm literally smiling reading that statement. So if you're wondering kind of how this all started, it started because on March 10th, I'm remembering that correctly. It's my dad's birthday. March 10th, George Stephanopoulos has an interview with Representative Nancy Mace, who we were talking about on the podcast last week as well. And Stephanopoulos repeatedly said in that interview with Nancy Mace that Trump had been found, quote, liable for grape. Again, take the G out of grape and you'll know what I'm talking about, okay? George, you cannot say something like that, okay? You can't say someone is found liable or something, they're found liable for something when they aren't liable for it, especially if you consider yourself the news, right? And this is perpetuated a lie I've actually seen so many times when people do man on the street interviews with people who are anti-Trump, that Trump is a grapist, right? That's what the majority of people think that Trump is guilty of. He was actually, by the way, when they're talking about the felony counts, the 34 felony counts, those are bookkeeping errors. It had nothing to do with the grape accusations, just as a heads up. But that is totally misperceived and misunderstood by the general public, probably because people don't care about this as much as you and I do, and that's totally fine, but probably because the media has a lot to do with our understanding and our interpretation of this. So here's what Trump is guilty of. The truth is that a Manhattan jury, whether you agree with them or not, the Manhattan jury found Trump guilty of a civil case. Now, true grape allegations would be a criminal case. It is illegal to do that to somebody, right? This was a civil case that found Trump likely assaulted her, and the damning charge, the real charge, was a defamation charge. So because we believe he probably assaulted her, but we can't prove that because this is a civil court, then we can charge him with defamation. So they're saying that Trump defamed E.G. and Carroll by saying they never interacted. That was kind of the charge, right? There's a big difference in found liable for grape and what I just explained, right? And listen, I get getting it wrong as a journalist, but what's interesting here and why settlement of defamation at this level is very difficult traditionally is because you have to have that kind of whiff of malice to what Stephanopoulos was doing for a judge to take this seriously. Now, again, I like to caveat things by saying, like, no human being is perfect. Literally, our last show, Thursday show, I said Daniel Penny murdered someone because I used the word murder synonymously with killed. But he did not murder someone. He killed someone because murder speaks to the intent of Penny's actions, and that was not his intent. And someone in the comments called me out and like, thank you to whoever that was, I forget your name, 100% right. Murder is not the right word. And like, I'm going to get on here and say, yes, I knew I was going to talk about this story and I would make my little apology here, right? I'm sorry, I got it wrong. I'm fine with getting it wrong and correcting myself. That did not happen on March 11th or the next show that George Stephanopoulos did. And also, as I'm speaking this out loud, I'm like, listen, I get that it happened here. I'm literally, like I said, a one-woman operation when it comes to content creation and oversight of this show. ABC News has resources to up the ass to ensure that these anchors don't get out there and make mistakes like that. And then if they do, that they come on the next day and make corrections for those mistakes. Which again, I think that in and of itself, the lack of correction speaks to the malice of the situation. And I'll leave that there because now you're up to date. Now you know everything about that. And it's funny to watch these people have to pay millions for the same people that were saying, oh, it's great to see Fox News pay for defamation cases against Dominion voting systems. That's how I feel right now. Anyway, let's get to our fifth and final story. This one has been keeping me awake at night, right? The White House's top security officials are still dismissing drone sightings that are popping up across the nation. I actually heard reports that the drones are in Tennessee, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe you need to buy a firearm and like start shooting these things down. It's happening in Florida, it's happening in South Carolina. This is craziness, abject insanity. But the White House has continuously maintained its position that these mysterious drones are just people mistaking helicopters for drones, because like we've never seen helicopters in all of our years, and all of a sudden we're just making this up. Sure, Jan. But the New York Post is doing us a solid. They put together a running list of possible explanations. Let's go through those, and I want to hear your thoughts. Okay, so here are some of the explanations. First one being a foreign adversary, possibly Iran, Russia, China, one of them. I could find this to be incredibly problematic, but also very possible, given that there is an Iranian ship that allegedly is now being used as a launch pad for drones. We found out about it about a month ago, and now we can't find that ship. So that's a plausible explanation, in my opinion. The second is a private company like Amazon is testing out delivery drones and is under no obligation to report the experiments to local authorities. Absolutely, that could be a very rational explanation for it, and I'm totally cool with that if that's a thing. For whatever reason, I'm just not 100% buying it. I don't know why Amazon wouldn't be publicizing this in the age of, oh, look what our AI can do. Look what our drones can do. I find it odd that they wouldn't publicize this, that they wouldn't go to the New York Post or give it to the Washington Post since Jeff Bezos owns it and be like, look at what Amazon is doing, right? And I feel like that's kind of in tandem with what we see thus far. Why would that? Interesting. The third theory is that eccentric hobbyists and or copycats are trolling the state and the media with repeated flybys of the vehicles, one of which has a wingspan of a 747. Okay, I don't know, like I said, any enthusiast who we wouldn't know of publicly who has the money to build a drone the size of a 747. Like, F off with that one. That's a dumb one. I'm not believing that. The fourth one, the U.S. government is behind the bizarre drone sightings and is lying to everyone about not knowing what they are. Ding, 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 ding. We have a winner. My opinion. Just opinion. But yeah, that would be my opinion. This one is, or we're all imagining it. At least according to the White House National Security Communications, John Kirby said. Upon a review of all available imagery, it appears many of the reports they're citing are actually manned aircrafts that are being operated lawfully. You're actually just an idiot for seeing all of those drones, you guys. Don't believe your eyes. Oh my gosh, if this is why I think 4 is so realistic. Don't believe them. The U.S. government is totally behind this in some way or capacity. They're probably, this isn't on the list, my guess is that they're doing some sort of military exercise, or they're surveilling something, or there is something that could be foreign on American soil, and they're operating and looking around for it. I don't know. All I'm saying is, the more they tell me that this, you don't believe your lying eyes, the more I'm gonna believe it. Just saying. But please drop your going theory on what you think is going on in the comments. I'll be reading them for a couple of days since this is kind of one of our last shows. But before we wrap up, I just want to give you kind of an MO or like an explainer on what the channel is going to look like. It's still going to be active during Christmas. I've actually got a very special Christmas video for you next week. And this Thursday, I had 2 friends come on the channel and react to some of the most underreported videos that are circulating online. So it's about 45 minutes. It'll be out on all platforms, including Apple and Spotify. So you can listen to it there if you're one of our listening audience members as well. That'll be out this Thursday. I'm heading out of town to go to AmFest with Turning Point USA, which is the biggest kind of conservative event of the year. Donald Trump will be speaking. Tons of big names that you would know, Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, Tucker, all the people. So if you are interested in getting a backstage look at all of this, please follow along on my socials, which are linked below. You can get a behind the scenes look. I'm also planning on putting a vlog out in the new year as well, so you'll get to see that. But I will see you guys back in this chair on January 7th for the beginning of season 2 of Underreported Stories. And if you're a real one and you made it to the end of today's show, will you drop the snowman emoji so I know you made it here? Thanks, friends. Have an amazing Christmas and a happy new year.
Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment about how beautiful, stunning, and funny I am. And if you want more content based in logic, be sure to click over here for more videos and clips of my show. If you have the means to financially support the show, consider purchasing from my merch line, Based Apparel, linked right below. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you back here next time. Bye, friends.